I'm wondering if you.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, let me finish.
Sorry. Thank you.
I just shut down there. Good. Okay, so I had the wonderful opportunity of playing with Saul at the sanctuary one day. He was set up with a much bigger pedal setup. And I said, can I play my bass with you? And he said, yeah, sure. So we played for about 20 minutes, had a great time. And I said, next semester I'm teaching an electronic music class. Would you be willing to come in and talk to my people about all your pedals? And he said, yes. And then he had to bug me to come because I kept forgetting to respond to that message. But so this is Saul Stewart, and he's a very wonderful bass player, wonderful person. I also played with him with MJ on the faculty recital doing video game tunes, 3 tunes on them.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm wondering if it would be possible to roll your chairs over maybe to where you can both see the screen really well, and then also kind of see what I have on the ground. However you're comfortable getting closer, if you feel comfortable doing that, I think would be helpful. Yeah, so my name's Saul. I moved here fairly recently. Yeah, I'm a composer, bass player, music educator as well. And yeah, do you go by Professor Post or Brian?
I go by Brian.
Brian, okay, cool.
They all just call me you. You're always respectful.
So, yeah, so Brian let me know that y'all are doing a composition class based around electronic music. So I thought I've engaged with using technology as a composition tool in a number of different ways, and what Brian saw me doing was one version of that. So I thought I'd go through a couple different ways in which I use this technology as a tool for composition, both to score for larger ensembles and also as a fully integrated one-person in the moment composition tool as well. So I'm going to go through these pedals, explain what sounds you're hearing, and then explain the looper, and then we'll dive into some stuff. And I'll probably ask to see for some questions at some point, and at any point, if I'm saying something that is not registering for you, or you would like more clarification on, or you want to learn more about, please just raise a hand, and I'm happy to answer questions as we go here too. So this is my travel rig. This is what I can take on airplanes, which is great. As Brian said, I have larger systems, but this is usually like the essentials for me. This first one being a sub-octave pedal, so if I'm just playing my bass, that's just my normal tone. It's going through this system, but there's nothing's on, everything's bypassed. This is a sub-octave and a fuzz, so it adds an octave lower than what I just played, and then also adds some fuzz to it. So again, and you can see it adds quite a bit of gain structure too, so that's always something I have to be with as I'm stacking tracks here. Next one I have is overdrive. Next one is a delay. You can do a lot of different things with it, but the idea is once you play something, it will come back at you in some way, shape, or form. And then the last one I have here is reverb. Okay, and then this has a number of options and different ways I can put through that. The reason I have these things is because, this is a professional level bass. It's reasonably expensive. 20 plus years to get me to afford this.
Can you tell us about that bass a little bit? It looks unusual to me in some ways.
Yes, thank you for that question. So thank you. Yeah, so most bass guitars are 4 strings, and they usually, like a Fender is usually, probably comes up 3 or 4 more frets too. I have this as a 5-string. Most 5 strings have a lower string, so it's tuned in 4th, so it's usually low B. If you have a 6-string bass, then there's usually a string on top, which is a high C. I did the opposite because I was seeking more options to do chordal stuff and for soloing too, and also for composition to do melody parts. So I actually have it strung as a 5-string high C. Thank you for that question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are you
Yes.
the bass?
How do you change the reverb based on the room you're in?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, depending on how much natural reverb there is in a room, I can dial back a number of different settings on this pedal to match, to make sure, because one of the things with reverb is it can get really washed out. You can kind of lose the quality of tone. So kind of balancing how much of the signal I'm bringing in. Yeah.
And would you just like turn down like the wet and dry or whatever? Usually you feel like just like a bigger room? Or is it more complicated for
It's,
you, like you personally?
oh, me personally, yeah, I'd say on this pedal, I don't necessarily have like the wet and dry option. Once it's on. I can control the type of reverb. I have a few different types, which would do, like, I don't know if you all saw me when I was setting up, I had this set up in my studio yesterday, and when I came in here, once I started clicking stuff on, I adjusted some things a little bit, just kind of intuitively, as I stepped into the space, knowing that this is a different container. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Can you only use the pedals one at a time, the effects one at a time, or can you mix and match?
I can mix and match, which we're gonna get to. I can put all of them on at the same time. I can use one. It is a chain, yeah, so it's all from right to left. And the only thing with the octave pedal, since this is on a bass and sub-octave, I usually can go down to about a C or a B before it starts to get like wah wah, because I'm doing a C or B below that, which on a 5-string low, B is like the lowest note that we can kind of get through speakers and our ears can kind of pick up. Yes, another question.
Like, can you do pedals with any instrument?
Absolutely, yeah. It gets a little more tricky if it's an acoustic instrument, like I do play upright bass, which is a beautiful, lovely sounding instrument. Once this kind of stuff comes in it can turn into a bit of a feedback box because it has a nice big thing. So with acoustic instruments like saxophones or cellos and voice as well, once you introduce air into the system, you might have to get into more compression and things like that to make sure you're not getting feedback. But yeah, this can work for anything. And you just need to get a strong enough signal chain of any sound to get in, and then you can add it to anything. Yeah, thank you. So the reason I have these pedals, one of the reasons is this is a really easy tool for me as a composer to dial in or generate new compositional ideas. So like I can study a scale and be like, okay, cool, that was the E minor scale. I can, cool, I like that idea that came off of that E minor scale. If I'm like, man, I'm feeling like I'm running out of ideas, I want to try something else, I can put this on. And the sounds that I'm hearing coming back to me are different. So I'm like, ooh, what is trying to speak through this pedal? What do I want to, what's this trying to say? So I was doing that one day and I came up with this. I'm like, cool, I like that riff, that's cool, let's keep going with that. It's feeling good in my body, like even playing this moment, like, that's fun. So at that point as a composer, right, I can start to write that down on pencil and paper, I can put it into my DAW in some way, shape, or form, I can transcribe it electronically into like my electronic scoring program, I can play it on a piano, I can play it on a keyboard. The issue for me as a bass player and also someone who wants to keep what I just did, keep that and use that as the inspiration point, is it's gonna change. It's not gonna, all the little things, I'm gonna lose some of that in translation. So that takes us to our next pedal, the looper. Question before I move on to that though.
I'm sorry, I'm like
Yes.
maybe new to pedals, but like, do you need an amp?
Correct. Yes, you need some way, even without the pedals, like if I,
It wouldn't do anything if it was, because it was going to nowhere. It's like in between the amp and the instrument.
exactly, I'm running a chain of cables from this, and I need the amp for this too. There's no, this is how much This is a solid wood. There's very little resonance coming through it.
I see.
Yeah.
But he could even use that little type of amp that Kyron brought to class one day and plays out on the quad.
Yeah.
He's got a little one over there as well.
Yeah.
As long as you got something with a speaker, but it's got to be able to handle the bass drive as well. It can't be too small, I think, for bass players.
Yeah, the technology's getting better and better. Like this is an 8-inch driver, I think, and that thing weighs like 7 pounds, which is like my rig back in high school was, multiples of that.
5 pounds.
Yeah, so so back to that. So the last part in this chain is the looper pedal. This pedal is amazing for me as a compositional tool because I can record and play back and stack tracks on top of what I'm doing. So as an example, what this track we just recorded. So now I have that back, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, let me think on that. And now I'm like, okay, I feel like this song could be good for like my jazz fusion ensemble. What could be a horn line on top of this? And a horn doesn't sound like my bass. Like this doesn't sound a lot like a bass to me, or as like a saxophone. If I add this, I have a little more sustain, which is a horn as a breath instrument. It can go as long as the breath goes. So with this, I can just start jamming along and see what comes through. It's also just fun as an exercise to just jam along. Like if I'm getting ready for a gig, I'm like, well, I'm gonna solo on this song. I might practice that. I can just put it right there. So eventually I did come up with a couple melody ideas for that. And I basically stacked all the tracks. Let me pull up that score.
Can I ask you a question? Later?
Yes.
You're really very good at stopping and starting that looper at
Yes.
perfect times for them to loop well. How did you
Yes.
practice doing that? How do you make that happen? Because when I use my looper, it doesn't always line up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great question. A lot of practice and play for sure.
Okay. Practice.
And a thing I'll get to at the end is I do have a couple songs where I wrote an entire composition that I perform live all loopers, so everything has to. I'm doing it in a live setting as a performance piece. I will say that this is a fully analog system, so there's no digital. Well, there's no computerization at any point. That's
Right.
maybe a better way to say it.
Yeah.
So there are pedals, which I'm interested in. That can I show of hands who's familiar with sort of quantizing? Okay, yes, great. So there are pedals now, loop pedals that do quantize, so you can get it to an actual click, an actual track. One of the fun things about this pedal too is it does have MIDI in. So one thing I can do is I can sync this with an Ableton Live session. I've done that for a show before where we're playing along live and I'll sync it with an Ableton track, and then I can stack loops that are in time with whatever is playing in the DAW. So that's super fun. So, but to your point, you'll see I'll probably get into some stuff where we're like, that was a little.
So I guess with the MIDI thing, you would pre-program some of the lines you're going to use in the show. Have you ever done a show where you just totally started cold with a new idea with a looper, started the looper and built on that in a live situation, or would you recommend already having something in the looper to start with if you're going to be out in public?
It depends what the performance piece is. Like that ambient cafe, that was all fully improvised in the moment.
Sure. Yeah, it would be so disastrous. I'm just asking, my daughter was doing some stuff with a dance company where she went out and she started the loop from scratch, and she said, "Oh, Dad, we had to start over."
Yeah, that is a thing.
So.
Yeah, one of the nice things about this is if I mess up, I can hold this down. Well, I guess I might have to add one more. Let's say oh my god, I didn't like that. It comes around again. Say I don't like that, I can hold this down.
Oh, right, then
and stop.
Nice.
So I can
Okay,
always
right.
remove one layer.
Uh-huh.
I can remove one
So you
layer.
can undo one layer. That's
Correct.
fantastic. So don't go and wait and listen before you.
Yes.
do another one.
And another thing, another trick I'll do is I'll play along through once, which you'll
yes.
see me do if we have time. And I'm like, okay, I feel good. Okay, let me track it this time.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah. It's a really good, just like as a recording artist too, it's a great way to just to get that feedback of the process of having like really focused intentionality on getting something like pretty darn tight in a moment. Okay, so let me play that section of the song. So this is a quintet. So you'll hear drums, bass, keys, guitar, and saxophone, and all of the parts I wrote are all just, I did that process I just demonstrated and just kept going with that process basically. Let me show you the A section. Cool, so that's how section goes. The thing with that though then is I get to the next section, I'm like, okay, I was cool, I'm here, and I want to go da da da. Okay, I'm heading down a whole step. So now I'm kind of gonna have to leave. The other thing with the looper is like I don't want the ideas in my head to be constrained by what I'm doing here too. So I might stop the loop at that point and be like, okay, let me go to a new section here so I'm not just continually stacking tracks just because I can. So that's the thing with technology too, is I want the intentionality of what I'm receiving my idea and whatever tools I have access to further that process. One thing I'll show at the end of the song, another fun thing with this is I use this as a composition tool. I like to make sections of songs where there's like tons of layers to things, and then I keep that as a loop for someone to solo. This is a drum solo at the end of the song where I started with, let's see here. Yes, let's see. You see, I kind of missed the beginning of that. We're just demoing it for now. So I have that to start with my cool. Let me add some things to that. Am I cool? I like that. And then I might add a harmony on top of it. So I was like, sweet. That's a fun list of loops there. And I want to spin that, and I'm going to let my awesome drummer just have fun over that. I noticed that drummers a lot enjoy soloing over that type of format, and it was a cool kind of epic slow build at the end of the song. So let's come to that section. Okay, so here you go. So here's that bass part I just played. I'm a vocalist as well. I will name like one of the best things I learned earlier in my music career as a bass. I went to a bass camp, and the guy running the featured artist at the camp was like, if you can sing it, you can play it. If you can play it, you can sing it. So a lot of times I will get the bass line going and I'll just start singing over the top too to find the melody that connects to an actual breath form. And then you can see those two harmony parts I just sing. So that part just loops. And the two instruments that have the most freedom in this, I'll let it play for a bit, are the drums and the piano. Like I just scored out bars like E minor, have a ball kind of thing. And then the drummer will slowly build a solo out of that. Let's see if we can pull up that section. See if we can get a layers going. excited about them. I'm kind of the only one holding down the fort at this point. There's one more line I wrote. You can hear it's arpeggiator. So that keeps going and going. So that's a fun way to incorporate like the inspiration of like having loops and using that as like we made like a human loop basically for one of our players to be the lead improviser. Everyone's improvising to some degree there. Cool. Taking a breath. Any questions on any of that stuff or comments or?
I have a question.
Yes.
When you're recording something like that and you're using a lot of effects, pedals and stuff like that, do
Yes.
you usually try to take a clean signal as well as the effects signal as well too, so that you can go back and make changes? Or do you just want the effects channel by itself and then make EQ and adjustments from that, if that makes sense?
Definitely, great question. That a lot of times comes down to time and resources.
Okay.
So that track recording I just played, we had enough time to just track everyone all together all at once. So for that, I did take like a DI signal, which means direct input coming out of the amp, and then I think we also mic the amp as well. Ideally though, yeah, there's ways in the studio where you can get an A/B switch where you're putting that at the beginning of your chain and you're taking a clean signal off of that and then the effects chain well, so that you have the maximum amount of control to mix those things together after the fact. So
Cool.
that's just more time.
Yeah.
So, but yes, so yeah, that's the way to have the most control for sure. And every pedal you add, you're introducing another cable, which you're introducing more noise to your signal to noise ratio. When I say like signal to noise ratio, does anyone have any idea what that might mean? A little bit? That's okay.
Yeah.
Do you, I saw half a hand, could you just maybe say in a few words what that, if you're open to that?
Signal to noise ratio?
Yeah, or just even those words in general, like what are we talking about with that?
Yeah,
kind of stuff?
just if you were to record like an acoustic instrument, the sine wave would be a lot cleaner because it's not as saturated by effects and processing and stuff like that. The more processing that you add to that acoustic instrument or whatever your input would be, the harder it is to get back to that complete sine wave, if that makes sense, because there's so much saturation and other things going on that you can't really like pull those things out once you've put them in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, thank you for that description. Appreciate that. Yeah. I saw a half hand out there. Would you be comfortable sharing what your thought or what your knowledge is around signal to noise type stuff?
I mean, sort of the same, like, I mean, at first I thought about, like, if you plugged in a bunch of cables, then it would be, like, a lot of cable noise, but on, like, Ableton, when I use it, it's like, if you just put a bunch of effects onto it, it doesn't really sound, it's not the same sound, and it doesn't necessarily sound better if you just put effects onto it, you know what I mean? So, like, you just have to learn how to, like, use them, and they're, like, tools like the pedal, and you just can't, like, plop them down. You just have to, like, learn how to use them, and part of that is probably the signal to noise ratio.
Yeah, thank you for those words. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was really good thoughts. So excellent points. So yeah, I'm plugged into an electro outlet which has some hum on it. It has some stuff going on. You'll get right. Which is a pretty clean signal. Sometimes you'll just get a hiss, and every time we add a cable, we can get more of that. And yeah, just because I have these pedals, like I can dial these up to a thing where I could start playing, and you're not gonna be able to identify really what I'm playing at that point. It'll be just like total, like essentially all effects processing. I think on that note, let's go over to something just using the looper, really without any of the effects. On this song, that was a pretty heavy funk metal kind of vibe. This is a much mellower vibe. So another way I can use the looper is I can get a pedal track down. Say I like that bass line. I played a lot of reggae adjacent stuff in my day, so I'm like, this is cool. Let me see where this goes. G minor or G minor 7. So right here, I'm like, let me get an actual chord progression going here. So this is G minor 7, F major, E flat, to A minor. Oops. Cool. So now I have a bass line and a melody, or sorry, a chord progression. So on top of that, I'm like, okay, cool, let me put that over top. So now I have my part. I can even start to work out some of the rhythm parts by just muting my strings here. Get at least the kick and snare kind of sounds. So with that, I can then, something I enjoy doing as a composer too, is to just get the basic parts of a song together. Just like, here's the melody, here's the bass, here's the drums, here's the step, and then letting my excellent bandmates start to add some of the inflections, the clings, the trills, all the, so we workshop it together. I love the concept of a jazz workshop where we can really start to pull it out, put it back together, and everyone can contribute their ideas. So here's how that can manifest. Here's A. Oh, sorry, not quite yet. Still in the So this line, the saxophone player came up with, because we were just jamming on this groove. I'm like, cool, let's put that in the intro. Here's A. So see how my singing of this melody translates to a breath instrument like this. Same thing as the last song. When I come to the B section, I'm like, I want to go somewhere else with this. I've heard enough of that objectively. Let me go in a different direction with it. One thing I did in this song too, which I'll play in the C section, is I started to stack some loops, and then I did a process like on the last song we kind of just added. This song we're going to pull some layers in and out as we go. So I had the actually I'll make my score. It's been a minute since I played this. Okay. So I had this progression. So like as you mentioned earlier, I have none of the effects on. This is just stacking up these loops. So cool, I have second loop channel. So it's a little, but get the idea. So something that's nice for me now is I just have that to listen to. I'm like, okay, cool. I can take that out, put these back in. So that's what I ended up doing on this song. I'm like, okay, let's take these 3 ideas into the workshop and see how we can play with taking them in and out, in and out. Who wants to improvise over these? So those are the 3 parts, and then I'll show you how that actually worked out on this song. So right now it's just drum and guitar. We're like, oh, that's a cool sound. Let's start with that. So sax is soloing over this. Let me back up a little more, Sarah. Come back to that. Let me come. Okay. I'll come back to that. Okay, here's C. So just bass and sax to start. Ooh. Broke it all the way down to a pretty big section right before. Harmony. Trumpet. Drums are in. So we have 5 pieces that we can kind of, just like you're stacking tracks and loops in your arrangement, you can able to share units. Okay, here comes 57 probably. So we drop the horns out, and now it's just bass, guitar, and drums. Now everyone's in. Sax is the main lead solo instrument. Organ is back in too. Cool. So that is another example of how we can use looping as a composition tool. Yeah. Any questions so far? Other comments?
I have another question.
Yeah.
So for some of your effects pedals and stuff like that,
Yes.
obviously they can't save like snapshots of certain parameters. So for
Hmm.
each song you do you have those just memorized, or is there a better way than not to remember those parameter settings for each song? Because I assume that could take quite some time to kind of get something exactly where you want it to be, if that makes sense. You can't really play and listen to it before that goes
Yes.
into being a thing. So how do you approach that, if that makes sense?
It does. That's a great question. Thank you for that question. There's a couple of different things. I think the room changes things as well. Like even just removing all the pedals, like just my bass and the tone changes I can do here and on this amp, you know, that I've played through once before, a few months ago. I'm just gonna start moving stuff as soon as I get set up. That just comes from playing like hundreds of gigs of just being, and like maybe there's a backline amp. I'm like, okay, and I have a few minutes. Let me get this dialed in as best I can. With the effects, I do like the concept of kind of like happy accidents type stuff. Like I just turned all this on yesterday to just to get set up for this presentation, and I don't even know what they're used on last or what it was used on, but I just started playing. I'm not sure. This isn't a delay I normally use. I was like, whoa, that's really cool, and I don't know where that came from. So I do like, that is the fun thing about this setup too, is it like as soon as I turn on, I'm usually hearing something for the first time because in transit or whatever is used last or whatever settings I have on my amp or whatever space I'm in or day, it's gonna be different, which I think is really nice. The flip side of that though is like this touring rig came from a specific show where, yes, I was eventually dialing in very specific tones because we had set songs and this was the best tone for that. That was nice because I was in a theater space, so I had plenty of time to dial it in once I got off a plane and get into the venue and all that stuff. And then other times, like with this jazz group, you know, we might have played like a coffee shop or an art gallery where I may get just 5-10 minutes, but I probably had a rehearsal with that group the week leading up, so it's probably fairly close to what I'm dialing in, but my sense is always to get the plan and the intention and then come to the space and then sense how it intuitively feels and adjust from there. So.
And like knowing your pedals, basically where the sweet spots are for where you're comfortable with certain sounds. Not necessarily like a direct sound, but like a general vicinity of where you would want to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's the same in your DAWs too, like working with effects in Ableton. The more it becomes an instrument onto itself, just like playing, you know, I can do that without needing the use of my eyes. And I can probably adjust a lot of this stuff without needing to even look at it. Same with this, the more that I connect to, like, I just know if I move this knob, I know how that's gonna change the sound. And I think that just comes with use in different settings. Use at home, use in rehearsal space, use in performance space, use in recording space. Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Another 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
I need it back.
Good, cool. Thank you for the time check. I appreciate that. So I think the last thing I'll do is I'll play part of a song. This is a song that is just for me. I wrote it to premiere at an electronic music festival as part of my master's program, and it's just me. It's just me and this stuff, and that's everything that's going on. So I think I'll show you those loops, and then we'll call it a day. If I can remember how this goes. Well, let me do something different actually. I will, let me think for a moment. Gosh, I'm totally blank on how that song goes. Okay, I think I remember it enough. Let's see what happens. Usually if you have the first part, that's enough to keep going. So I'm going to use both these loops again because I can actually sync between them. And I'm going to make a rhythm section track on one, and then put my bass and melody on the others, and that way I have control over the levels of those things. I'm using something called harmonics, so I'm not pressing the string down. This is another example of like how we can, this is a G, this is an octave up, this is 2 octaves up, and that's that same note but without pressing on the fret. So I'm also using my finger amp at the back pickup. Again, this is effects too. Just with myself as opposed to very different tones. So I'm like, okay, I want a bass part to that. Maybe I'll do that later. Now the knobs, now the things, as you mentioned, become the instrument as well. It's a purely electronic music thing at this point. And then I can slowly fade that out. Here's my song.
If you've got more questions for Saul, feel free to walk over and chat with him while I start working with a few of you on your presentation for the Idea Fest. So,
Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your attention.
Of course, and soon you can.
Do you have any
some-
shows
some-
coming up?